Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in beautiful Fresno, California, the heart of the Central Valley, and the Central Valley is the heart of the state of California, and it is a great day. I'm glad to be here, and I hope you are glad to be here too. And if you're not, make a choice to be glad to be here now, because now is the time. Now is the point. Now is where you have your most power to create what's going to come after this. You know, Ernest Holmes always said there is a power and a presence, or a presence and a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. And that's what we're here to talk about today. You know, I've been, last couple shows, I've been talking about treatment and talking about changing the world one person at a time, being the change that you want to see in the world. And it's a theme that I'm probably going to continue to work on for a while, because it covers so much, and there's so much that we can apply directly to our own life experience. And in creating our life experience as a dynamic, powerful, abundant, wonderful life experience, we can create an expression of love, peace, harmony in the world around us. We can change the world. We can change the world one person at a time. I believe that Dr. Holmes believed that, and I believe that as he taught science of mind and spirit, that was one of the underlying purposes for his sharing this philosophy, what he called a faith, a philosophy, a way of life. And as we make it our way of life, we affect life in general. So we're going to talk about that today. But I want to start with kind of a foundational opening here as we move forward. This is a book. I don't know that these are still in print anymore. It was a 3-volume set. It was called the Ernest Holmes Papers. It was published by Dr. George Bendel after Ernest's passing. And it was a collection of writings that he had, or transcriptions from talks that he had given. Some of these talks were given in very intimate and personal situations, and some of them were more public. But it's a great resource if you happen to have it. If you don't, I know you can still find them out there used, and I highly recommend that you get all 3 volumes. But in the second volume, which is entitled The Anatomy of Prayer, as we approach the first chapter, the first story in the book, he has an introduction here, and he says, Ernest always believed the biggest danger to the practice of the teachings was the practice of what he called dualism. The basis of all healing is the complete conviction of one individual spiritual system, God in and through all things. Therefore, what is known in one part is known in all parts. And as we have been reflecting on our individual ability and power within this affirmative spiritual mind healing, affirmative prayer treatment, it comes down to understanding that God being everywhere present means that God is present not only around us, not only through us, but God is present as us and works for us by working through us. So one of the things that Dr. Holmes was very adamant about was this very simple thing. You know, there's a phrase that you hear it commonly, and people don't think about this when they say it, but there are implications, and I am one with God. And Holmes says this implies a separation, so that we have to glue ourselves back to God. I and God, one with God. God as me, universal presence, universal power. There is no separateness. And as we go through our talk today, and as we look out into the world around us, we can see how often, so many times, the idea of separateness has shaped and changed the world in a chaotic and what we can call a less than positive way. Positive and negative thinking, speaking of less than positive, implying that there's 2 kinds of thought, positive and negative thinking. There's only one kind of thought. Now, the implications may be limiting, but there's still only one kind of thought. And I have to overcome this condition. And don't we get caught up in that? I have to overcome my poverty. I have to overcome my relationship problems. I have to overcome my work problems. I have to overcome... We see life as not problems, but challenges, and we have to overcome our challenges. The answer's already here. The answer's always been here. You know, it was Eric Butterworth talking about in healing, spiritual mind healing. And I believe Dr. Holmes referred to this also. that there's nothing to be healed but just truth to be revealed, that we separate the condition from our client or from ourselves, and we seek to see the truth of who and what we are. And so as we start today and we look at creating our life in such a way that we become a light, a beacon in the world, we're going to start with the idea that there's nothing other than God. And there can't be something as God expressing that is less than God in all its godness, goodness, abundance, power, however you want to address it. I think that's pretty awesome. I think it's a great way to look at the world. And I think when you got up this morning, or I think, and I should clarify, this is my thinking, you have your own, but when you get up in the morning, you look at the day before you even open your eyes, and you can claim that it is a great day. It is a day of potentiality. It is a day of potential miracles. It is a day of potential goodness. It's a day of potential godness. But you got to claim it. One power, one presence, working for you by working through you. In this book, Living the Science of Mind, moving on to the next part of my introduction here, on page 311, under the title Love Dissolves Fear. To understand that love overcomes both hate and fear is one of the chief requisites of a scientific mental practitioner. Love does not overcome hate and fear by argument or by force, but by some subtle power of transformation, transmutation, sublimation, invisible in its essence, but apparent through its act. That's a concept that you see in a lot of the writings of New Thought authors, including Dr. Holmes. But it's one of those things that oftentimes I don't think we really embody as we put this principle into practice in our life. We don't argue against hate. We create a loving consciousness within ourselves. When we get into the concept of arguing with hate or anger or any of the other particular things that may limit us in our life expression, we essentially empower it. We give it a false truth, and then we experience the reality of it. If we're going to change the world one person at a time, and I do believe that's what we're doing, we're going to continue to do through the New Thought, Science of Mind and Spirit, or any other philosophy, any other way of life that sees people as a unity of oneness, that sees the world as an expression of the divine principle, that knows that there is no place, no space where we can go where God is not there, and good is not there, and abundance is not there. But we have to know it. No matter how dire the situations that we may be faced with in our day-to-day life experience, if we look at those conditions and we claim those conditions, guess what? They are our reality. Now, I will tell you, for a person that comes to Science of Mind and Spirit from a different spiritual background, or maybe no spiritual background, the idea of looking at an individual or a condition and not seeing or giving power to the condition, but seeing the truth, the absolute behind it, calling that out as an expression of truth, as a knowingness, starts with an understanding that there's one. As Dr. Holmes says, there's one. We have to start there. There's only one. If we open our mind up to the possibility of something other than one, then we've already opened our mind up to some degree of separation. How far that degree of separation goes depends on where we're at in our lives. And most of us, as we've grown up in the physical world, the world based in what our five senses tell us and what the people around us have tell us, and what this thing we call race consciousness has informed us as so-called truth. We've embodied as beliefs, and it's done unto us as we believe and we experience. And boy, do we experience. How's your life today? Yeah, I opened up and said it's a great day. Has your life been great today? In the ordinariness of today, have you noticed the incredibleness of your expression? It's there. When you were, metaphorically speaking, just a thought in the mind of God, everything that you could be, that you would need, that will allow you to express God maximally in this physical plane was already there. Think about that. It was already there, and it's there now. We look out into the world and we see what the world tells us. We see the chaos of the news. We see strife within our families. We look at our communities and we see the things that maybe they pull on our heart. We want to change. We want to make a better world, a better life for others. We got to stop and look at our own life first. What is life mirroring back to us? Life mirrors back to us what it is that we accept as truth. I believe in a better world. I believe it's possible. I believe that that's what Ernest Holmes believed, and he believed it was possible. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all unless we as individuals step up and begin that creative process within ourselves. I'm going to refer back to something I read a couple weeks ago. This is out of the book, The Philosophy of Jesus by Ernest Holmes. It's a collection of his writings. At the time he wrote this, and consider, the world is in search of the answer to its problems. Frustrated and distraught, disillusioned and chagrined, today it stands on the brink of two possibilities, to be or not to be. The world today is shocked by the realization of what it has brought on itself. Nothing is more certain than that we have failed. This is one of the most optimistic men of his day. And as he looked out in the world, this is what he saw. And he says, as never before, millions of people are ready to try something else. That something else that for too long has been neglected. That something else which alone can make it whole. Can make the world whole, can make life whole, can make the entire expression and experience of this physicalness that we call the allness of the creation of universal intelligence. The realization that it's whole and can be whole. Nothing is more certain than that we must rediscover the secret of the ages, this coming into close cooperation with the presence that made us and the power that sustains us. He was talking about where he saw this philosophy, this way of life, this faith, where its place was in the day-to-day life experience of all people. We get caught up. We get distraught. We get all sorts of stuff. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how it is we experience this, and in a way, where it comes from in our lives. So I'll see you when we come back.
Linda Lee Kane is an author of fantasies, thrillers, contemporary fiction, and children's books. Order a book by Linda Lee Kane on Amazon or on lindaleekane.com.
Hi, I am Bobby Bliatsu. I have lived in the Central Valley nearly all of my life. I am proud of our community, but believe we need better leadership in Washington, D.C., and believe health care is a basic need for families here in the Valley, and that's why I'm running for Congress. I've put together a website, bobbyforcongress.com, that explains more about my family story and my values. I hope to earn your support and your vote. Thank you.
Paid for and approved by Bobby for Congress Committee.
At Miracle Realty, we've been providing premier professional residential sales and property management in residential and commercial property for years. We manage single-family homes, condominiums, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, office space, and much more. No matter what experience level you have in property management, Miracle Realty strives to make your experience as stress-free as possible. Serving Madera and the surrounding areas, we use the latest technology and provide top-notch service. We're a trusted and reliable name in residential sales and property management with the experience to answer any questions or complications that might come up. Give us a call today or visit us online for more information.
Discover retirement living the way it's meant to be and live your golden years to the fullest with Rose Meadow Manor. Rose Meadow Manor offers assisted living, memory, respite, and hospice care. To learn more, call 559-840-1991 and visit rosemeadowmanor.com. The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find The Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center in Fresno, California. Anyway, before we went to the break, I was talking about how Holmes had seen the need to understand the oneness of the divine principle and various aspects of that. And then I talked about the chaos and how I'm looking at changing the world one person at a time. So I want to take you now to a little book that I've referred to from time to time, How to Use the Science of Mind, by Ernest Holmes. And what I want to read here to you is on page 65, second paragraph. It says, "In practicing the science of mind, we do not deny the physical body, nor the physical universe. Instead of denying the physical universe, we affirm that it is controlled and governed by a principle of harmony, unity, and of peace. It is necessary that life clothe itself in form, else it, the divine principle, would remain unexpressed." And we're here as an expression of that principle. Now I want to take you to the Science of Mind book that we often refer to as the textbook. And let's see, what I'm going to read here can be found on page 448. And Dr. Holmes says the whole purpose of the science of mind is to reconcile the apparent separation of the spiritual world, which must be perfect, with the material world, which appears imperfect. And boy, does it. The spiritual world is the cause of the material. We are spiritual beings governed by mental law. Only that world can appear to us which we mentally perceive. In other words, we are experiencing an expression of what we believe. What we believe as individuals, but what we believe collectively. And this is another one of those concepts. Jung called it the collective consciousness. Dr. Holmes called it the race consciousness. In other words, not individualized race, but the human race. A collective consciousness of race that affects all of us. It affects us in ways that we're not even aware of, and it affects us on a level of consciousness that we're not often aware of. But we can see its effects in our life. Jung called it the shadow when we're talking about the negative aspects of this. Early on, Christian Larson, he talked about it as beliefs. And they're talking about the same thing, even though the words are different. We're going to get into that because this becomes very important as we look within ourselves to create the great you, the great me, that God had intended us to be. Spirit, universal intelligence, the one life. However you want to address it with a capital I in your life. There's no special name that anybody has to follow. But there is a feeling, a connectedness that we have to understand. But going back to this concept of the shadow or beliefs that we hold that affect us in negative ways, it lives within us in the most powerful part of our mind, and that's our subjective or subconscious mind. I say it's the most powerful because even today, neuroscientists look at the subjective or subconscious mind and say it's responsible for about 95% of what goes on in our life, which means our consciousness is like 5%. You think, well, how can that be? I'm conscious throughout the day and all this, and you go on. And I mean, our ego tells us that our conscious consciousness is the us. But the truth is, it's just a partial expression. Now, whether it's 5% or 20% doesn't make any difference. It's the smaller portion of the greater whole. And once we begin to understand that, when we begin to see and look at how we are embracing this journey of change within our life to create a better life, to create the individual that we want to see as the world expressing through us, we have to address this. We have to sally forth, if you will, into that dark territory. So there was a book written, it came out I think about 91, and it's called Meeting the Shadow, and it's a collection of writings including Jung and many others. But I want to read you something, and we'll talk about the race consciousness or collective consciousness. It says, today we are confronted with the dark side of human nature each time we open a newspaper or watch the evening news. The more repugnant effects of the shadow are made visible to us in a daily immenseness through the media message that is broadcast globally throughout our modern electronic village. You can get it on Facebook, you can get it on TV, you can get it anywhere you turn anymore. It's there. And it's not really life-affirming. To say that we're dealing with negative conditions kind of flies in the face with the concept of oneness is when I opened that I started with. But not really. Because ultimately, we're dealing with positive applications of destructive thought, if you will. It's a way of looking at it. Destructive beliefs, limiting beliefs, and beliefs that have been handed down through generations to generations, through teachings, through philosophies, through family history, through cultural history, through national histories. You look at the legend, if you will, of humanity, you see a lot of stuff that's not real affirming, if you will. It's not real positive. But it was part of the process that brought us here. You know, through our life experience as a species upon this planet, we have been in an ever upward spiral to a greater and higher consciousness, expressing a greater and higher good. We have today the capability, the availability to do things for good in the world like it's never been done before. And in some areas that's being expressed. But we also have the availability and the capability of spreading fear, doubt, anger, hatred, prejudice, feelings of separation, beliefs in separations. And why is that? If this is such a great idea for creating a greater good, why is it that not only culturally but individually we have to experience those expressions in our life? And it's a question that I've asked myself a lot. I continue to ask myself. I believe that I found some answers. There's probably a whole lot more. As you are working on your journey, you may find more that I have no clue of, and feel free to share them. I'd like to know. But I want to get back now. Jung called it the shadow, that part of us that holds beliefs that we're not aware that we hold, that are not life-affirming. Christian Larson and I referenced this a while back in a book called What is Truth? And Larson's an interesting individual. Not only was he someone from whom Dr. Holmes took lessons from in metaphysics, I believe he was also the very first editor of the Science of Mind magazine. But what he said in this book, and when I read this the first time, it really kind of knocked me off my feet. He says, what we believed yesterday, we frequently discard today, and what we believe today, we are not quite liable to discard tomorrow, or we may, possibly with a few exceptions. Nevertheless, while the beliefs of today remain, we are so thoroughly convinced that they are true that practically nothing can change our minds. That's part of our conscious beliefs. But it's also there on a subjective level. He goes on to say, in fact, our present beliefs sometimes have such a powerful hold upon our minds that we have absolutely no desire to think differently from what we do. And what is more, those very beliefs, as a rule, refuse to be examined. It is certainly mental bondage, with a vengeance, when a mind dare not examine the credentials of its own beliefs and is so completely under the control of its own convictions that it is unable to question their genuineness or authenticity. Now, if I were to tell you that you were under the control, mind control, of something that refused to be addressed, something that has held you in bondage, that has kept you at a level of unhappiness and limitation, that maybe has prevented you from having successful relationships in your life, or maybe has kept you in a life of poverty, and I told you that those beliefs have created your reality, and they live within you. For people that have not been familiar with New Thought, that idea can be rather startling. For people in New Thought, oftentimes understanding the level of the beliefs that they hold that they're not aware of can be amazingly awakening, if you will. Because in order to change, we have to change our beliefs. It's done unto us as we believe. That's what the master teacher said. He didn't say it's done unto us as we believe consciously. He didn't say it's done unto us as we believe selectively. He said very simply, it's done unto us as we believe. So as we look out into our life today, what we're experiencing and what we're expressing, what we're demonstrating and what we're not demonstrating, is all a reflection of what we believe, whether we're aware of those beliefs or not. The beliefs that limit us, it's as you begin to understand that you have the power to change your beliefs, as you begin to understand that what you believe today you may not have believed yesterday, and what you understand as truth may not be absolute truth, you can get very excited. You want to move forward. This is great. We're going to really make change in our life. But we have to be aware that the change is going to come against, very often, an inner resistance that we're not even aware of. A resistance that is willing to do what it takes to hold its ground, to keep us right where we're at. And on that note, I'm going to take my second break, and we're going to talk about right where we're at and how to move forward when we come back. I'll see you then.
Let Senior Care Authority help you make the right choices for your loved one. Senior Care Authority will meet with you and provide guidance to help you find the best independent living, assisted living, or memory care, offering 6-bed home or large community. Senior Care Authority will help you navigate a complex healthcare system and ensure you get the proper care for your loved one, and the service is free. Visit seniorcare-fresno.com or call 559-900-2076. Vote for Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council in District 3. Over the last decade, Miguel has collaborated with residents, public institutions, and business leaders to improve public safety, increase education access and success, and increase workforce training and jobs. As Fresno City Councilman, Miguel Arias will build upon this track record of success. Learn more at miguelariasforcouncil.com.
This message is paid for and approved by Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council 2018.
Lease or buy this modern 2-story Spanish-style building with private offices, open workspace, 2 restrooms, and a break room. This commercial office building is located at 10 East Olive in the Tower District. The floor plan is designed for easy conversion, and all interior walls are movable. Parking available in the rear in a fence-secure lot. Call Mike Briggs Properties at 559-486-6758 or visit MikeBriggsProperties.com. Voir dire, An Oath to Tell and Seek the Truth by Santiago Camarena, depicts the vicious cycle of drugs, crime, and incarceration. It argues that the media, politics, and our laws systematically contribute to this cycle. Get your copy of Voir dire at voirdirestory.com. Connect with Dr. Alan Hedberg. Watch Doctor Teach Me to Parent on CentralValleyTalk.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Listen to The Psychology Report anytime at thepsychologyreport.buzzsprout.com. Visit booksbyhedberg.com and order a book for your personal growth. and join the conversation on twitter.com/Alan G. Hedberg.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. So, we're looking out at the world. We're realizing that the change needs to take place. And yet I just expressed that we have beliefs that work diligently to keep us right where we're at. How does that happen? Well, the simple explanation is that a lot of those beliefs we picked up when we were young. We picked them up during a time when our minds, our brains, didn't have the faculty that allows us as adults to filter out comments that are limiting, comments that keep us in a place where we don't necessarily want to be. They embed themselves in our minds, they become part of our subjective belief systems, and they hold us there. This is that area, that region, that Carl Jung called the shadow, or Christian Larsen's called beliefs that we hold that we're not even aware of. As I shared last week, and I'll share again because this is one of my more favorite quotes, the range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we have failed to notice, there's little that we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. So how do we notice what it is that we fail to notice? We take a look at our lives. I talked about that last week. We take a look at our lives, we see the limitations that were there, and we say, okay. And I've come to this new thought philosophy that says there's a presence and a power for good that is available to me as I open myself up and make myself receptive to it at the level of my beliefs. And there I run up against a wall that just can't seem to be knocked down or pushed through. There's no door because my beliefs refuse to budge. This is where the power of various tools, like meditation, is a very powerful tool, something that we should all do on a regular basis. It's something that science has shown us has an extremely positive effect on our minds and our bodies, our health. But spiritually, it has a positive effect on our beingness. But oftentimes, the easiest place to start is with a simple affirmation. In the process of creating an affirmation for ourselves, if it's something new to you, if you haven't had experience with it, let's not try and conquer the world in our first affirmation. We'll make it simple. The more important part is to make it a daily part of your daily experience, a regular part, consistent part of your daily experience. Even if it doesn't feel true when you first begin to say it. Ideally, you'll say it throughout the day. Really ideally, first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening are perfect times to really hit that peak moment where we can address our subjective mind. In the morning, that first 20 minutes after we become awake, our subjective mind, subconscious mind, is at its most impressionable. And at night, right before we go to bed, the last things we think about, oftentimes we take into sleep with us, where it's worked on, again, in our subjective, subconscious mind. So those beliefs that we hold that are hanging on tight, we can come at them kind of obliquely. We don't have to push too hard. And you know, it really is amazing. People don't realize the power of constant pressure. It doesn't have to be great. Take a look at the Grand Canyon, for example. At one time, that was a flat plain. All it was is just water, rain, and a river slowly, in the case of the Grand Canyon, obviously it took a long time. But in the case of our lives, it doesn't have to take that long. What's really amazing is that as we begin to make this a habit, we are remolding, if you will, we are reframing the actual nerve connections in our mind, and we're reframing the function of various parts of the brain. There's a lot of really new and great science out about these things, and it's easy to find on the internet. And And if you have a mental curiosity, I highly recommend that you go out and you take a look for it. But we can do this. We understand when we start that our goal is to make it a habit. One of the things we know about making habits is there's three aspects to habit making. One is the trigger for the habit, two is the activity of the habit, and three is the reward that we get from doing the activity. This applies to addictions. It applies to creating positive habits in our day-to-day life experience. So for a trigger for our habit, making a specific time of the day can be our trigger, or a specific activity. Putting a post-it note in on the mirror in our bathroom, so that when we walk in the bathroom first thing in the morning, that's the trigger. We say our affirmation. That's the activity. Then we get a reward. And the reward can be just simply looking yourself in the eye, in the mirror, going, you're awesome, and working on feeling the awesomeness that you are, which is true. You are awesome. I don't know you, but I do know that about you. You are incredibly awesome. You are a creation of an infiniteness that it knows no bounds, and we have no way to really understand, but it's absolutely the all that is, the good that is, the love that is, and it absolutely supports you when you open yourself up to it. So you have your trigger, you have your activity, and you have your reward. Now, for some people, that reward may be a couple of minutes with your favorite book, or if you happen to be someone that needs a little food reward, as long as you don't let it get too out of hand, maybe a little bit of food, something special, something that you don't have at any other time of the day. But as you begin to do this, you're going to begin to affect and change the whole underpinning of your belief system within your subjective mind. And the science of this is really incredible. Well, I'm going to take you back to something I read as we got into this. Again, from Living the Science of Mind. To understand that love overcomes both hate and fear is one of the chief requisites of a scientific method and a scientific practitioner. Love does not overcome hate and fear by argument or by confrontation or by authority or any other way, or by force, he says, but by some subtle power of transformation, transmutation, sublimation, invisible in its essence, but apparent through its act. And this is where people that live in our day-to-day life experience they run up against a little resistance. Things don't change unless we take them into control, and we do it through our own way, and we've got to make the change, force the change. And I think history's full of forced change failures. A lot of times those changes were for good. Good intentions. Good outcome was sought. The reality is something less than. Because we have to start right at the beginning. We have to start at the essential. And the essential is the individual. And through creating within ourselves the change that we want to see in the world, by subtly transforming, transmuting the energy, the power around us, the people that we deal with, understanding that change may not come about because you did something that involved you, and yet it came about because of what you did that involved you specifically, was noticed or in some way had an effect on another individual who may have taken that notice, that effect, and applied it somewhere in their life, and maybe touched another individual. Individuals, as we go through life, when we understand that there's a totality of unity, that we're not stuck in our individualness, our separateness, we change. We change our expression individually. We change our experience societally, culturally, in our family. We change the world. We change this race consciousness which has the history of humanity that tells us there's lack, limitation, disease, so on and so forth. And we see those things in the world today, no doubt about it. We don't see them at the level we used to, but they're still there. And if they're there, they are things that do need to be addressed. But how we address them, that becomes the question. I'm not saying nor advocating for some type of ignorance, or if I don't pay attention to it, I just work on myself, it's going to go away. But what I am advocating is how we address it. And the addressing of the issues starts with us. The demonstrating of the truth starts with us. And that's the power of New Thought, Science of Mind and Spirit. That's the incredible power that Dr. Holmes saw so many years ago. That's the way of life of this faith and philosophy that he introduced to the world. And although it is considered New Thought and in the New Thought movement, and even Dr. Holmes looked at it as New Thought, if you look at the history of Science of Mind and Spirit, if you look at how Dr. Holmes brought this concept into a teaching format that allowed the organization that resulted from that to begin to express itself and change the people around it and change the world. And there's so many areas, if we look historically at the history of the religious science organization, areas in society where we were on the cutting edge for change for good, and how in critical times, New Thought, religious science, science of mind and spirit was right there for individual rights, environmental purposes, however you want to look at it. But it wasn't necessarily done in an authoritative way. It was done by leading through a change in consciousness. And we can do that. That's where the power is. We have that power. And I believe that today, in today's world where we see so many people that are discouraged, and maybe you're one of those individuals that you're discouraged with the spiritual, surroundings that you see in your life. You're discouraged with traditional theological teachings, or you just think that you don't need to be a part of, and you are entitled to believe whatever you choose to believe. But consider the concept that there is a presence and a power for good in the universe that is available to you, and you can use it. Consider what that means in your life. Consider how, as you apply this in your life, and it takes application, your life will change. There's been too many people that have put it into practice, that have seen the demonstrations and the manifestations. There's been a lot of people that attempted to put it into practice that seemingly didn't see any demonstrations. And so it begs the question, why is that? Are they less than as a person? Is there somehow, some way that God, Spirit, First Cause would frown on an individual? The answer to that question is no. God is impersonal. God will rain on the hero or the miscreant. Will cast sunlight on the less than and give it to the good, what we call good. It's how we as individuals choose to react to it. If you understand that no matter what's happening in life, that there's always good to be found, as you understand that when you look for the good in any situation, you can find it. You begin to shift the consciousness of your mind. Those beliefs that you've held that have sought to limit you will fall away to the weight of the good that you bring into your life. You don't have to directly oppose what you believe, even if you have beliefs that you're not aware of. What you need to do is be proactive. Our beliefs do work against us if we try to directly go at them sometimes. They're insidious is how they do. We commit to doing this one new thing. We're going to work on a new habit. And maybe we're good for a week or two, or even 3. And then all of a sudden, something comes up in our life. We get distracted, we're too tired, we don't have time, and we miss it. We miss it once, twice. Pretty soon we're not doing it at all. We see this every year with with New Year's resolutions. And then I've talked about that before. That's why so many people that really at a gut level want to change their lives, they make their resolution, and statistically by about the 15th of January, they've already broken it. We don't have to be those individuals. But let's not try to change the whole scene in our life in one fell swoop, one big bite. Let's seek to demonstrate, and this is the beautiful thing about New Thought, Science of Mind and Spirit, is when we begin to seek to demonstrate in our own lives, and we put it into practice, demonstrations begin to come. We're going to take our last break, and I'll talk to you when we come back.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-454-0655. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-454-0655.
Learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010, and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Build the Reedley College Center for Fine and Performing Arts by making a donation at sccd.edu/donate.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. The recession's over. It's now safe to sell your home. Call Mike Briggs Properties.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in beautiful Fresno, California, the heart of the San Joaquin Valley, the heart of the state of California. And if you haven't been here, it is a place to be for sure. Moving on. The philosophy of spiritual mind healing is based upon the conception that we are living in a universe of intelligence, a spiritual universe, that thoughts are things, that definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, operate through a creative field and tend to reproduce themselves in form. And we've talked about this in the past, and I'm going to touch on this again. When we say it's done unto us as we believe, it's as we believe, not as we think we believe. This is why being able to step back and look at our entire life expression allows us to further, deeper evaluate some of the beliefs that we may hold in that shadow self, that subjective self that is less than empowering. You see, when you speak your word, in other words, when you begin to pray in an affirmative way, our beliefs are not in the words that we speak, although they may be. Our beliefs are the beliefs that we hold. So if I'm speaking my word, if I'm engaged in a process of affirmative prayer for good, for myself, and I fail to hold up others, I fail to open up my consciousness and make it free of prejudice, feelings of separation, of doubt, even though that's not prominent in my mind necessarily at the time that I'm doing my practice, my spiritual work. It still will limit me. It will still hold me back. And we still have to move forward. And this is why a commitment to daily practice becomes so important, and with consistency over a period of time is so powerful. Realizing that it is that powerful. Not allowing ourselves to get discouraged by what the world tells us. People have come to various forms of new thought. You know, they get excited about the law of attraction, and yet they're not willing to take that extra step spiritually to clear their minds of things, and they don't understand why the law seemingly doesn't work for them, and maybe they see it work for others. All the work that has to be done only in one space, one place. That's within us. In chapter 16, under the Principles of Successful Living in the Science of Mind book, Dr. Holmes writes, the lessons on prosperity and mental control of conditions are sometimes dangerous because of the misunderstanding of this subject. The science of mind is not a get-quick-rich scheme, neither does it promise something for nothing. It does, however, promise that the one who will comply with its teachings, that he or she shall be able to bring greater possibilities and happier conditions into their life experience. That this philosophy extracts from each and every practitioner. And if you are a follower of a New Thought philosophy on some level, you are a practitioner. And if you're not practicing actively and consciously in your life, I encourage you to do so. But as we do so, we are held, if you will, to a higher standard. A standard of realization. A standard of acceptance. And it goes back to what I opened the show with today. There's but one. Just one. Holmes said 1, 1, 1, 1. We have a tendency, because we've been raised and raised in a level of consciousness that has this, we can call it an egoic expression, that we have our tribe or our family or our nation or our community, and however you want to define that. And that doesn't mean that because you identify in your life in a certain way because of your race or your culture that you come from or whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you forego that. But what it does mean is you see that is just like the color of your hair. It is part of the divine expression of which you were created in and as. But that's not you. You are and can only be one thing, because there's only one. When you begin to realize that I am only an expression of the divine principle as me, everything else, if you will, is just window dressing. For some of us, that window dressing may be something that we have to overcome because maybe we were born in a place where we're a little bit behind the curve, if you will. It could be a physical malformation, could be a mental malformation. It could be a societal prejudice. It doesn't make any difference what it is. We were all created equally, for sure. We're not all born equally. We're born where and when we are in the space and time. But, and this is the big but, no matter how, no matter where, we have, God has given each and every one of us all the tools that we need. Everything we need to transcend whatever our birth has defined for us that we are. We're not our birth. We're not the place of our birth. We're not the people we were born with. We are a creation of the divine, expressing as us, through us, with an intention and a gift for us to express this life experience maximally. God gave us life. That's God's gift to us. How we live this life is our gift to God, if you will. And I don't remember where I heard that, but I've heard it often enough that somehow it's stuck in my mind. But it's a good thing to understand. Every breath we take is a gift of the divine principle. Every action that we have, that we do, is us taking the tools, taking the gift, and expressing it in this life experience. The divine is perfect and can only be perfect. Physical life expression is oftentimes much less than that perfection. We see limitation, we see disease in the world, and we define those as things. There's only one. When we stop defining those as things, it's true we experience them, but we don't have to define them within our belief as a reality. And when we do that as individuals, through a very subtle transformation and transmutation, we change the world. If we want a world in which everyone can express themselves in all of their greatest potential, truth is we have that world. But if we want to see that world expressed, we have to take what we are. We have to take what we understand of divine principle, and we have to express it into the world. We have to be the light for others to see. A light that shines oftentimes in what we think is darkness. And yet, there can be no darkness, because there's only one. One. There's a presence and a power in the universe that is available for each and every one of us, and it's for good. We open ourselves up, we embrace it, and we put it into practice. And practice, and practice, and practice. And as I heard Les Brown say in many of his talks, he says, practice makes what? And people oftentimes respond by, practice makes perfect. And he goes, no, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes improvement. Well, maybe we can improve to the point of perfection. But if we practice and improve, we're going to get down that road. But we're never going to go anywhere if we don't practice. That is the power of new thought, science of mind and spirit, putting it into practice. I hope you practice it this week. I hope as you share with like-minded people, as you come together in your communities, that you reinforce and reaffirm to each and every one the goodness, the godness of life. And when you see something that life brings at you that maybe in the past would trigger a thought, a reaction that was anything other than love, that you begin to look beyond and see the greater good. There's only one. I'll see you next week. There's a power and a presence for good wherever you are. God is. All is well. Have a great week. Take care. Bye.
Linda Lee Kane is an author of fantasies, thrillers, contemporary fiction, and children's books. Order a book by Linda Lee Kane on Amazon or on lindaleekane.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com